Hey, this is Chad with Drawn and Cornered. It is December 6th, 2021, and here's the news you need for today. First off, Omicron. It's here. It's in a half dozen states, maybe a little bit more than that, across the United States, and it is spreading quickly. What we know so far about this is that apparently the rate of transmission is higher than obviously original COVID-19 and even Delta. But seemingly, we are not seeing severity increases. So it's going to pass very quickly amongst everybody. Whether or not the vaccines have any sort of, inclusion or capability to stop Omicron, or if natural immunity stops Omicron, we're not really sure about that just yet. But it spreads quickly. The good news is that it's not killing people. So what we need to sort of realize here is that, like every other disease that we deal with across the world, we're not really concerned about how quickly it gets anywhere or the transmission rates. We're worried about whether or not it's killing people or hospitalizing people or having dramatic effects on people. If the worst that you're going to be dealing with is achy fever, a bad cough, something like that, and limited time under duress, is this really that big of a deal? But what you're seeing across the world is countries locking down, putting in significant measures for masking, for vaccination, for lockdowns. All of this is happening all over again. It's cycling back up. The difference is that people are far more resistant to it now. And if you're not showing them that the danger has increased significantly, you're going to find even more and more resistance. And if you speak with the doctor from South Africa who actually found this, she says very explicitly, this is not like Delta. This is not like the original one. We are not seeing the rates of hospitalization and death being spiked by this transmission rate. We're not seeing Omicron as a significantly problematic virus. In fact, she has already talked about some of the measures that other countries are putting in as far as travel restrictions and all this. And she's like, whoa, like we're way ahead of ourselves here. We don't need to do that because at this point, Omicron, though I found it, though I recognized it, doesn't seem to be a significantly different or significantly more dangerous variant than the ones that are already out there. So like, let's just pump the brakes a little bit. But again, as you'll notice, that politically, this is helpful for certain factions. I'm not saying that they are creating Omicron. I'm not saying that they are necessarily responsible for Omicron, but they are certainly going to take advantage of Omicron as best they can to push different agenda points. This is one of those no crisis goes to waste. So if they can create a crisis out of what could be just another variant that slides under the rug, then we're going to do it. We're going to try and get things done and taken care of based on Omicron that don't necessarily make sense because of Omicron. The other thing we wanted to talk about is we've got a couple of countries out there that are flexing their muscles a little bit. We've got Russia building up forces along the Ukraine. It looks like there might be an invasion potentially happening here, or at least saber rattling about an invasion. There has been a little bit of pushback internationally, but essentially it looks like Russia is at bare minimum, flexing or threatening a little bit. And possibly will do the invasion if there isn't a significant enough blowback from the international community, or they don't think anything will happen. Maybe they just run right through. China also doing a little bit of flexing, saying essentially that Americans who had threatened diplomatic, basically not allowing diplomats to go to the Olympics this year, kind of staging a little bit of a protest about China and a lot of things that they've been doing, will be met with political and diplomatic pushback by China. So they're essentially saying, stop doing this, nobody cares, nobody is worried about what your diplomats are doing, and we have our own weapons that we can fight back with when it comes to diplomacy and pulling shenanigans like this, essentially. China is no longer tolerant of these type of actions, or at least seemingly no longer tolerant of these actions. But either way, on both of these fronts, we're seeing tensions rising. We're seeing tensions being pushed a little bit further. We're seeing people that we would qualify as enemies, or at least not friendlies, taking deeper and deeper steps into areas where we would prefer they weren't. And that only pushes that potential for conflict, or at least potential for issues in the future, whether they be economic, whether they be military, whether they be just diplomatic, political. All of those things are all heightened a little bit further as they make progressions towards things that we specifically do not want them doing. So keep an eye on those. If we get an invasion, or if the dignitaries from the U.S. decide they're not going to go to the Olympics, they are going to boycott the Olympics, I imagine China will have something to say about that. That's everything I have for you today. One short story that it just still is awful, but apparently the parents in the shooting that occurred in Michigan have been brought in on charges. If you read further about the things that these parents were doing, one, they ran when the cops said that they were coming after them, which is kind of a significant recognition that something was off there. But the text messages sent back and forth between mom and son right before he was shooting or during his shooting saying, don't do this. And I'm not necessarily mad at you. You just have to be better about not getting caught. The fact that they gave him a gun as a Christmas present and then didn't account for that gun after the school called them and said, hey, we've had some sort of disturbing and worrying behavior from him as far as the things that he's drawing and talking about blood everywhere and help me and I can't stop the voices or whatever. All of that, parents are being brought up in charges. Obviously, this kid's being brought up on charges as an adult. I want to say he's only 15, so that's a new discussion that we're going to be having as well. It seems to me that adult crime, you're going to be charged as an adult. If you have, a small theft, you're stealing a Snickers bar, or raiding somebody's garage as it's open, okay, fine, we'll deal with you as a juvenile. You start waving around a gun or murdering people, you're going to get charged as an adult at almost any age. So that's my thought. We'll see how it happens. But the parents being brought up on charges here, this is an egregious case of parents neglect or even encouraging this type of behavior. And that's going to be an interesting thing to see as well. It's also one of the worst stories I've heard in a long time. So this is Chad with Drawn and Quartered. That's everything you need today. If you have any questions, comments, critiques, want to tell me I'm crazy, leave that comment down below. If you like this sort of thing, bite-sized news and analysis, a little morsel to take on with your day, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell so you get notifications every time we release a video, which is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I will see you on the weekends if anything big happens. Otherwise, again, this is Chad with Drawn and Cornered. Thank you very much, and I will see you again tomorrow.